You ready?
Absolutely.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are Adventuresome Reviews. Today reviewing a most heinous book by an author we have already traversed.
You may recognize the name Wallace Peach.
Today, having written the book Catling's Bane,
which is in no way related to her former book, Sunwielder.
Yeah. We also today have a sponsor, Color You, an independent band that's graced us with their music.
We are most honored.
And terrified. Yeah. Us being neophytes and Philistines who don't know what music is. You may take it away, my minion.
Catling. She's a weapon desired by those who reign and those who rebel.
I needed to give myself a pink eye.
We have some
think
spray
of these
paint.
things.
We have some spray paint.
I just imagine my eyes pink. Bright all around. It's pink stuff.
Y'all understand why in like 2 seconds. Back to the synopsis. In the tiered cities of allegiance, the Elite Influencers Guild holds the power to manipulate emotions. Love and fear, pleasure and pain, mark the extremes of their sway. But it's the subtle blends that hook their victims' hearts. They hide behind oaths of loyalty and rule the world. Until Catling discovers the gift that will be her bane. She is the shield that disrupts the influencer's sway. Born in the grim warrens beneath the city, Catling rues the rose birthmark encircling her eye. Yet it grants her a unique ability, the means to remake civilization. To the guild, she is an aberration, a threat, and they order her death. No longer a helpless child, Catling has other plans. As chaos shakes the foundation of order and rule, will she become the realm's savior or its executioner? You need an executioner. Welcome to a world of 3 moons, a sentient landscape of rivers of light and tier cities that rise up from the swarms like otherworld flowers. A planet of water dragons where humans are the aliens living among 3-fingered natives with spotted skin, where half-blooded converse with the fog and the goddess plans her final reckoning. In the spirit of the fantasy tradition set by Patrick Rothfuss, Karen Miller, and Glenda Lark, follow Catling's journey as she grows into the deadly force that shapes the future. She is the realm's shield, an influencer, assassin, healer, mother, and avenger, and all she desires is to go home.
Ooh, fancy and stuffs, and I should probably preface all this by saying I really like this book.
I really like this book, though we kind of did away with critiquing the synopsis.
This was a really good synopsis.
It was a really good synopsis, but parts of it, like the main thing that describes the plot of the story, you have that one paragraph in the middle. Everything that happens in that paragraph is more towards the end of the book.
The book starts out with her being basically a foundling living on a farm, and that's not even remotely accurate, but we're going to pretend it is because it's kind of accurate.
No, it's semi-accurate. She's not a foundling. She was
sold into servitude, but it's not one of those usual grim, vile servitudes that one would expect from that plot point. It was a nice family, all things.
It's actually almost a trade. No. Okay, so not in the trade as one thing for another. It's the old-fashioned learning a trade. It's very akin to that.
Apprenticeship.
Yeah, apprenticeship. It's very akin to apprenticeship.
You are my apprentice.
No, I refuse to admit that.
Admittance or failure to so does not qualify as not guilt.
I'll let you think that.
So, back to the review before he horrifically derailed me.
Derail?
Derail.
I never derail. I take us down paths that are better tread than left untread.
Derailed. Prose was really good too. Well, not like, oh my god, this is the best prose
This
ever.
book has a lot going for her. It is leaps and bounds better than her first book that we've read.
You dislike Sunwielder more than I dislike Sunwielder.
Almost all my problems with Sunwield were resolved in this book.
Yeah.
Many of you probably didn't watch our review, but the main problem with Sunwielder was the characters were weak. That is completely ditched in Catling's Bane. You have a lot of characters and they're interesting, powerful, and
complicated. Which it's one of those plots that doesn't go for the easy black and gray or this is good, this is evil answers. The morality of the system suffuses the book, and it's one of my favorite parts about it. Because you have these influencers and they manipulate people, and so, but the author doesn't just treat them as evil. There's beneficial influencers who recognize that what they're doing is vile and heinous, but still do it because they think it better fits their country and it makes people safer, while acknowledging that what they're doing is morally wrong.
And they do have, they're fighting against mad kings, pretty much. They're keeping the other powers in check by influencing them toward doing less egregious acts, keeping wars down to a minimum. They have good reasons for influencing the powers.
They're just all vile and evil people at their core. That's not even remotely accurate.
It's fair.
It's an incendiary view of the subject. There's a lot of them who are morally upstanding. They just
because each of them take an oath to do what's best for the world, rather than from any country or person. So you have the good influencers who uphold their vow and they do everything they can to protect the world from the madmen and conquerors and villains.
And then you have people who have a looser view of what that vow means.
It's the tip. They exemplify many of the typical attributes we ascribe to overpowerful people who have no checks or balances. Because the Influencers Guild is unquestionably the ruling force of the world. And you go ahead.
I had nothing really to add. I was going to suggest the word absolute. But
they have absolute power over the world, and what's better is that they get paid to rule the world because they're a guild. So kings say, "Here, come over and help me here." And the yeah, sure, we'll come over there and help you for a small fee. They have a nice racket. The influences aside, the opening chapters for the book were just fantastic, and they set the entire tone and just quality for the story.
The world is really well designed. You get a lot of it in the synopsis with the sentient rivers, the active goddess, the light, and the fact that the cities are
alien
tiers and pillars, and it's a really cool world. It's not really delved into immensely. There's no huge blocks of exposition, which is on one hand nice because there's no exposition. On the other hand, it does take some of the specificity that exposition gives. You interact with the world by going through it, which works really well for smaller environments, stuff that you can really interact with. But you go through huge pillar cities or swamps or rivers, and while it's not hard to navigate in your mind, and this isn't really criticism so much as just you need to spend a lot of time thinking about it. Or
the author gives you a bunch of pieces, and then you kind of have to put the pieces together to form the general image of the world.
But that's all it really amounts to, is a general image. So it's going to take more books to really get a good grasp as a reader on what this world feels like. Because the synopsis actually rounded out some of my view of the world. Like I knew all the individual pieces of it, but how they fit in the world was
the synopsis boiled the world down to manageable chunks that were easy to consume and envision.
Yes. This is actually a book I didn't really read the synopsis fully before bolting into. Heretic. Characters, lights, action.
Not entirely sure about the context, but I will run with it. Going back to the first chapters, which serve as a study for excellent first chapters. The opening prologue, the main character nearly gets drowned. And this is what actually, with a little bit of putting pieces together, this is what gives her the powers she boasts throughout the rest of the story. And she was nearly drowned by a character who shows up later in the story, again, and he nearly drowned her because he was told to by that goddess. So you got all sorts of interesting details right there.
I don't think she was actually meant to drown, because the goddess is useful for later on.
No. Basically, do we want to explain the magic system at all? Besides what the magic does?
There's not really much to explain. They can influence people's emotions.
No, how the... okay, so there's a certain way people can go about acquiring the magic. And so that's what I argue, or...
It's not particularly spoilers, but it's also not particularly relevant.
Okay, moving on. And the second chapter, and this is probably one of my favorite parts of the book, it's Catling's home city. There are routine hanging days. And this is where the influencers just really kind of make the story their own. It's just an incredibly engaging part of the narrative. And so you have all these people, and it's this giant festive occasion. There's food, lights, party, action, dancing in the streets, not quite, but you get the idea. And it's all centered around the fact that the dictator of the city is grabbing people up at random and hanging them,
while the influencers influence the crowd to be overjoyed and joyous at the occasion.
So some woman's kid was getting hanged, and she's laughing and cheering along with the crowd because the influencers are manipulating her emotions, and it's this dichotomy is really enjoyable.
And look at him enjoying the murder of children.
We all have our sadistic enjoyments. I could list a few of yours.
The dogs want to come in. Shh, don't tell anyone. But yes, there's several scenes like this throughout the book, and it really establishes what the influences are as... What's the word I want? Antagonists. The antagonist vein of the influencers, and how they're abusive, and it establishes them in the world as a force. Because usually emotional or mental manipulation is reduced to a single, technically or generally protagonist individual. This is a world where that's the entire magic system, and it's low-key an exploration of what that would mean.
And it also just shows how dangerous it is. The dictator is controlling an entire massive population, and he's doing it easily. And so you have this scene where everybody's cheering for the hangings, and everybody's happy, and then later on in the book, shortly after, you have the scene where Catling comes along and she breaks the influence, and you have these two scenes, and it's fantastic. Because she single-handedly brings the city to chaos. And she's not, it's like, the dictator needs like 20, 30, whatever, how many influencers to control the city. One little girl breaks this entire thing down. And it's not that she's like breaking all the influencers, she's just breaking this person's influence on this person over here and that influence here, and it's kind of spawning a chain reaction of sorts. Not to say a chain reaction.
Yeah, ignore it. She shields certain people, and the moment she removes their shield, the influence is reasserted. So without going to spoiler territory, though this is pretty obvious, she eventually grows her ability and can shield multiple people.
Right. Basically, she's a massive thorn in the dictator's side.
A rebellion will form and the world will come crashing down.
But here's another aspect that I just realized I like about the story. She is not the noble hero. She did not.
She is a really well-written character. A whole slew of character traits that work and meld, and she grows throughout the entire book believably from an infant to a teen, and it is great as she evolves and her personality actively changes while you're reading.
My one minor problem with the character is that she feels a bit old when she's a toddler.
She does, like, the first initial years are a little bit, she's a little bit precocious in the wrong way.
Because it feels like she's kind of other.
Yeah, and while yes, she is technically other, she's not other, like as in Fae or other, or anything special. She doesn't have special origins, she has a special magic, and some is that she's described as quiet at the start, which is automatically strange and evil. But there's no real reason for her to feel as quote-unquote, not necessarily wise, but
she does not. There's no reason for her to feel old beyond her years.
Not hugely old beyond her years.
But this does serve a useful part to the story because this knowledge and age that do not belong to her are part of what convinces her to join the actual.
It's not a rebellion. It's more of just
a person who wants social change and wants to deal with the injustices of the world. So he would typically fill the role of main character hero. And this is really nice because he's the one who drags Catling into the story, but she has no desire to be this character of light and change. She just wants to go back to her family on the farm and live out her life with her 5-year-old boyfriend. Which works, but still, they're very young.
Speaking of him, he's one of the few parts I didn't like as much about the book. A lot of his scenes felt like he was just treading water. A lot of his chapters. Which is sort of the one light criticism I have for the book. Is that there are a lot of chapters, or not a lot, but there are several chapters or characters where the story doesn't actively progress. And some of it is because the characters are growing up throughout the course of the story, and they're also learning to control themselves and their abilities, etc. But there are just certain chapters where they're just existing and there's no real impetus in the story. This is mitigated by the fact that the prose is really solid and the characters are really solid, so the book never is boring. It's just some scenes don't have that real push or a way of saying, yes, I am important, or I matter.
Briefly returning to the characters, though, Catling is a powerful or a fantastic character right now, but the author is also setting up secondary characters to be future importance, and that's really nice. Her boyfriend, for instance, is, yes, he treads water for a bit, but you see him barreling toward a moment of destiny where he's going to be integral to the story. And there's other characters like this, and so that's really well handled.
Yeah.
Speaking of like the general plot, very good all the way up until the end, which ends on a slightly generic note. But it's not.
Like, maybe it's slightly generic, but I really like where it's going.
I suppose.
Because it's putting, well, actually, yes-ish. I like where she's going to end up. That's a really cool concept. I'm really looking forward to that. But with her evolving? Is that what you meant?
Evolving. The new skill she's about to learn.
Yeah. I don't want to go into it too much because that's spoilers, but she's going violent super god nonsense. Cut out the violence, but she's somewhat losing her distinction by the end of the book because she starts through the entire book. She can just block out influence. By the end of it, she's going to start learning how to influence, and so it's not a huge dealio, but it does stuff. Any other thoughts?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Okay then. I think we are done today with this travail of a review. Once again, like, comment, subscribe, maybe check out the music of Color You.
We'll have a tag or something, so in case you need help with the spelling or the actual pronunciation.
It will be in French.
Yes.
But listen in Japanese.
That's just getting way too complicated. I think English and Spanish would be a lot easier. But we spell it in French.
Those share the same alphabet, though, largely.
Exactly.
That's the problem.
Yeah, but we're going to spell the English word in French and we're going to write it in Spanish. It does not make sense, but I expect you to go with it.
Writing the English word in French is just the French word or the English word. English and French share the same alphabet.
Not after I'm done with the French alphabet. Go out.
Murder! Murder!
Consider it.
Goodbye! I leave this cruel world!
Anyway. Catling's Bane, 4 out of 5 stars, and
4.5! 4.5! Highly recommended!
fairly well, our future friends.
Goodbye.